Hi, welcome to another exciting React.js beginners tutorial. This is a continuation course. If this is your first time with React, then I suggest you click on the link above or the first lesson link in the description box to watch the first part of this tutorial. In that first lesson, we discussed React.js and also explained the meaning of JavaScript library. Then we discussed JSX, components, props, and also introduced the use of map function. If you already understood the mentioned, then this is your place to be. Let's go. My name is Martins. I'll be your instructor, and this is curly brackets. The first topic we will be discussing in today's lesson is UseState hook. UseState is a hook that allows you to have state variables in functional components, where you pass the initial state to this function and it returns a variable with the current state value and another function to update this value. Okay, let's leave the conventional definition for a moment. See UseState as a bucket. Yes, this very one, or the one you have in your home. It has a space that can hold content. This content can be water, sand, or anything you want. But in this case, let's call it content. So we initialize the state variable named content. This content holds a value. We can as well refer to this value as initial value or initial state. Then it has an opening at the top. Through this opening, we can make changes in this bucket. We can pour in content or take from it. That means this opening is the only way we can make changes in this bucket. This is how to declare a state. To demonstrate what I just explained further, I have before me here a counter app. Now, it is expected that when I click on the plus button, the number in the cycle is supposed to increase by 1, and when I click on the minus button, the number is supposed to decrease by 1. When I click on reset, it's expected for everything I have here to return to its original value or the initial state. And then when I click on switch color, it's expected that what I have here, the background color, which is black at the moment, should become a different color. Alright, now to demonstrate this, let us go ahead and make this application functional. Now, the first thing we need to do is to import our UseState hook, import curly brackets, UseState, like this. From React, initialize the variable now. So we say let's count equal to UseState, and this UseState or this count should have a value, right? So the initial value or the initial state is 0. Count is the variable itself, right? But how do we now make changes to it? We need a function through which we can make changes on our count. In our explanation, you remember that this count here represents the content of the bucket, right? And the set count here represents the opening of the bucket through which we can make changes in the bucket. So through this guy here, the set count, we can take or add to count. All right, now we need to make our buttons functional. So let us work on the increase button first. So to do that, we need to declare function increase, and then we'll say this function, every time this function is called, we want set count to perform the following operations. We want it to increase the value of count by 1. Every time this function is called, we want it to do one simple thing. We want it to increase the value of count by 1, and the only way we can do that is using set count. We can't say count is equal to count plus 1, right? That's nonsense. It can't work. Okay, because maybe this is possible in JavaScript, but in UseState it can't work like that. All right, so we can only say set count increase the value of count by 1. All right, So here button will say on click. Now in normal JavaScript, this is okay, all right, and then you put your, let's say, increase. Let's check it out. It's not working. Now the reason it's not working is because of this guy here. In React we can't do this, all right. We can only say on click like this, capital C, because in React.js the camel case naming convention is enforced. All right, so on click until increase, and again we can't say increase like this. Okay, well, let's try it. Increase. Let's check it out. Our application is broken. Let's know if we can see any error in the console. All right, too many renders. Well, the reason for this is because of this guy here. All right, what this guy does is when this application loads, this guy starts running and it runs continuously. All right, so every time the application reloads, every time the application re-renders, this guy here runs. So if we have a function called like this in React, it causes the app to break because it renders the function over and over and over and over again until it breaks the application. The best way to do it is to do it this way. All right, so what this means is the only time this can run is when we click this button, else it won't. All right, so let's check it out. See, our application is back, so let's check it out. It's not working. Actually, it's working already. The only issue here is that we are not seeing it. Right now, to see it, we need to this application here, this variable here, we need to change this to count. So let's check it out. See, we click this button twice, remember, so it's already 2. Then give it 10, 18, keeps increasing. And then let's do one for the decrement. So we'll say function decrease set count. So every time this button or this decrease function is called, we want set count to do the following: to decrease the value of count by 1. So let us pass this value somewhere. Click equal to decrease. Save it. Let's check it out. Good. Everything is working fine. Now I want to take this back a little bit. This is how we declare our use state in React. It must have the value holder or the variable, and then it must have the function through which the variable can be altered or updated. All right, and then the use state must have an initial value passed to it. So any value you have here is the initial value your variable will have. So in this case we have 0, so the initial value of this variable is 0. All right, let's refresh this page. See, the initial value is 0. Okay, let's change our initial value to 10 for an example, and let's refresh this, and the initial value is 10. You understand that? So items or the components of a use state, it must have a variable, and then it must have a function through which the variable can be altered. All right, and then it must have an initial value or initial state. Let us do one for our reset button. So what do you think our reset button should be? Let's have a function reset. Right, every time we call this function reset, we want set count to perform the following function: count equal to 0. So we want it to reset this guy to its former value. So let's do this and decrease it. And then we want this guy to reset it. Oh, it's not working. Okay, we haven't called our function. All right, let's do that. On click equal to reset. Right, so we have our counter app working now. Then when we click this, it resets. Now we have switch color, and then we agreed, or we discussed earlier, that every time we click on this switch color, right, we want the background color of the application to change to something else. So let us try that out. Now this brings me to what I'm going to discuss next. Right, so to do this, we need another UseState, right? And say, okay, let me use const. Say const. Oh, what do we call this? We'll call it switch color, and then the function, we'll call it set switch color equals to, should be a UseState, and it should have a value, an initial value of false. Now let me explain. First of all, I want to explain the naming convention, right? Where here we have count, and then we have the function as set count. Actually, this can be anything else, right? You can say, you can call it new count, and that means if you can have your new count here, and then new count here, and then new count here. All right, you can call it anything you want, and if you pass let's check it out, it runs fine. Right now, the reason I use set count, or the reason I said set count, is that is actually the most common naming style you're going to see for UseState out there. Is the variable and then set the name of the variable. All right, that is what a whole lot of developers use, and that is the most common thing out there, right? So it's a very common way of naming states in React. So I'm going to leave it that way. All right, now the next thing I want to talk about, right, is the values that UseState can hold. UseState can hold virtually all kinds of data types. All right, it can hold a string, it can hold numbers, can hold Boolean. In this case, we have false here, so this is Boolean, and here we have a number. All right, so now your state can be any kind of data type you want. In this case, the data type for our state switch color is Boolean, because you can see here I have false. So it means that this state here can only have true or false, right? And in this case, I have a number right here, so that means this guy here can hold all manner of numbers. Okay, now if you make this a string, all right, so what this can hold, it means that the data type of your state count is string. All right, now every time I click on this guy's switch color, right, I want something to happen. I want the background of our account app to be different. All right, so what should I do? I'm going to say function, let me call it function bg color, and every time this guy is click, I want our function set switch color to do the following. All right, of our switch color to true. All right, so let's try that. Let's say quote BG color. All right, so now the next thing we need to do, we need to make it possible for this background color to change every time we click this button. But then we have already passed the function here to this place, right? And we told it every time we click this, switch this to true. It was false earlier. We want every time we click this, we want it to switch it to true. Now there is a div responsible, there is a class, responsible for this background color here, black. So what we need to do, here is that class, here's that class, background color black. All right, now what we need to do is to have a similar class with background color white, right? So what we tell React to do is, if switch color is true, use this. If switch color is false, use this class. And if switch color is true, use this class. That is what we need to do. Now, how do we do that? To do that, we need to bring in the JavaScript. We need to use the JavaScript ternary operations. All right, JavaScript ternary operations. If you don't remember what JavaScript ternary operations is, I think you should read up on it. All right, I think we should just read up on it. You can see how it looks like. So what this means here is, if its member is true, the value should be this, else the value should be this, right? It is a shorter way of if else statement. Using the ternary operation, we can just put everything in the same line like this. Now I know you must have done JavaScript before coming to this class. Then I guess if you don't remember this, I think you should just try to read up on it, and then let's proceed. So what I need to do right now, I need to tell React, I say, if switch color is true, what is the meaning of this? Like switch color question mark. I want you to use this class, else I want you to use the other class, count circle 2. All right, let's save this and check it out. Let's switch color. What we need to do is we need to make this in a way that when we click on this, it switches to white. When we click on it again, it switches to black, right? And that can't happen because we told our button here to do one thing: set switch color to true. All right, so once the button is already in true state, it can no longer change, right? Because we told the function to set switch color to true every time we run this function, and it's already done that, and so you can no longer change it right now. So I think the best thing we need to do is to say switch color. So every time we click on this button, we want it to change the value of switch color every time we click on this button. Now what this means is, if this is true, when we run this function, it will become false, and if it is false, when we run this, it becomes true. All right, so let's check it out again. Look at that. Some of us uses Twitter and Facebook and the rest of them, where they tell you to change the mode. You can use dark mode or the light mode. Actually, this is what is going on, right? So every time you click on that mode button, this is similar to what happens there. All right, the background becomes dark, and then the text becomes white, or the background becomes white and the text becomes black. Simple. All right, so all of our app is functioning. Every button is functioning right now. We reset it, and then we can switch. Now I hope you understand the reason I use let here and I'm using const here, because if I make this a constant, for an example, I can't reset it. All right, I can't reset it. I can't assign a new value to it because it's a constant. Let's do this. Increase it will work, this will work, this will not work. All right, I can't say count equal to anything again because it's a constant, so I can't assign a new value to it, right? So I can't do that because it's a constant. But if it is let, we can have that happen. So that's the reason why this is let and this is const. So let that not confuse you. If you don't understand everything I've done, please do not just go to the next topic. You are free to replay this video again and again until you are able to understand and practice what I have done. And please practice a lot, right? One way to learn how to code is to code. Now if you understand this, let's switch this up a little bit, shall we? Now to take this a little bit further, we have before us here a heart sign, a heart icon, right? And I wanted that when I click on the heart icon, I want it to be filled, a proper filled heart icon. And when I click on it again, I want it to be empty. You know, I'm sure you must have seen this type of thing in many places or in some websites, Airbnb websites and the rest of them, where you can choose a favorite. You know, you can choose your favorite item by clicking a heart sign, right? Yeah, so that is the kind of thing I want us to achieve here. So let us try it out, right? Let's go. Now the first thing I need to do is to import my UseState. I have already done that, and I have already imported the icon, right, for the icon that we are seeing, and I have the icon here imported. So let's initialize our state. So to do that, I will say const, let's call it a heart, all right? And then this heart is a UseState hook at the moment holding the value false. So we need to add a function set heart, which we are going to use to update the value of the heart. And then we should have a function, and let's call that function heart switch. And when this function is run, when this function runs, we want it to do the following. It should flip whatever value the heart holds at the moment. So if the heart is false, it should make it true, and if the heart is true, it should make it false. So we can say that, you can see that this is a Boolean data type. So we have a state heart which has the Boolean data type false, right? Which has the Boolean value false, sorry. On click, we want you to run, sorry, we want you to run heart switch. But then, so let's click on it. See, nothing is going on, right? Because we don't have the filled heart icon. All right, we don't have the filled heart icon. So let us bring in the filled heart icon, right? So we need to bring it in. It's right here. So let's keep it here. Now the red heart icon is here. Yeah, so we have two now, but actually what we need to have is one at a time. So I need to make the color of this particular one red. Let me just do that in the CSS. Alright, I just made some adjustment in the CSS, so we now have the black and the red. So that's not what we want. We want one to display at a time. Alright, so to do that, we need to run our function and say this guy here, all right, we have to put it in curly brackets, okay, and we need to say, using the JavaScript scenario operations again, we need to say if heart is true, if heart is false in this case, so it should be if heart is false, right? We want this guy here, want this div here to show, else we want this one here to show. So what do we do next? We need to pass an onClick attribute, right, to our icon here, and we'll say heart switch. So every time we click on this icon, this runs, it switches the value of heart. And also every time we click on this particular icon here, okay, let's just say it, let's see what happens. Okay, now we have this, right, and when we click on it, wow, it turns into the field heart button, right, the field heart icon. But when we click on the field heart icon, we are supposed to switch back to the former one, and we can't do that. And to do that now, we need to do what? Bring in the onClick attribute back here and say switch. Let's look at it. Woo! It works. Now let me explain this a little bit. We have a Boolean state called heart, right? The initial value of this state is false, and then we have a function called heart switch, and every time we run this heart switch, we told React that every time we run this heart switch, we want set heart, right, to flip the value of heart. That means if heart is true, we want it to be false when we run this, and if it is false, we want it to be true. And you remember that the only way we can make any change to this guy is using the set heart function. All right, so now we have our icons, the outlined icon and the field icon, and then we put everything inside curly brackets so that we can make use of JavaScript. So we said if heart is false, we want it to show this particular one here. That is the meaning of this. So this means that heart is false. So if I take out this, the red one will show false because the red one shows if the heart is true, right? Let's check it out. You see that, right? It's now true by default, of which if you click it, it will still flip. All right, but then we want to, when this renders, we want it to be false. Okay, so we want the outlined one to show first. Now you have it. Let's refresh. Now you have it. Okay, so we'll say if heart is false, we want this div to run. We want this div to run, and that div has the outlined icon right here. But then else, which is the meaning of this is still like if heart true this, and then if heart false, but then we are using ternary here. So else, we want it to run this particular one right here, and that's exactly what happened. So what we did is that we passed the onClick attributes right to our icons. So every time I click on this outlined icon, it switches the value of heart to true, and when that happens, this will run, and when that happens, the field red icon will show. And when I click on the field red icon, it switches the value of heart to false, and when that happens, this particular one here runs. Now if you don't understand this, I advise that you practice it more and more and more. The best way, I'm saying again, the best way to learn how to code is to code a lot. Just practice more and more and more. If you don't feel like going further, no problem. You can pause this video here, take it back, and play from beginning again. All right, listen to the bucket explanation, the bucket analogy again, and with it, I believe gradually you're going to understand what we are doing right here. All right, to discuss UseState a bit further, I have on the screen a password input box. This is something we see every day in websites. So this application should run in such a way that when we type our password and then we click on this icon here, it should flip, right? And we should be able to see what we are typing. Okay, I'm sure you see this a lot in many websites. And this icon here should become something else, like an eye. These are some of the things that we can do using our UseState. All right, so let's get into it, shall we? Okay, so the first thing I need to do is to import the UseState, which I have done already. And here is the icon library that makes this icon possible. Okay, so I have already written the CSS, and here I have the class names in the CSS. All right, so what I need to do now is to, oh, this is from the previous one. We don't need this right now. All right, so what I need to do right now is to declare our state, and to do that I'll say const, oh, let's call it something. Let's call it toggle, and then say UseState, and this toggle should hold a value, a boolean value, for the moment false. Then we need a function with which we can update the value of the toggle. Alright, so next thing we should do is to have a function. Let's call the function. By the way, I hope you know you can make use of arrow functions in React, just like you can do in JavaScript. Let me make use of arrow functions this time. So let me say const handle toggle and I want to, whenever we run this function, we want the value of the toggle to flip and become opposite of what it was, right? Okay, what I just did here is same thing as saying function handle toggle set blah 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 blah. You know, this is just same thing, right? I made use of arrow functions here. Okay, I'm just doing these things. I'm just saying this. I know a lot of you know already, or maybe you don't, so I just have to put it out here. All right, so the next thing I need to do right now is to call this function, right? And I want it to happen right here. I say on click, I want you to run handle toggle all right, so the next thing we need to do, we need to bring the eye icon this time, the open eye icon this time. Of course, when we click on this, when we type something and click on this, nothing happens yet for the moment. So we need to bring in the eye icon. So to do that, I will make use of this one. All right, so in the time being, let us paste the password here. Okay, so now we have our handle toggle function running, and the instruction we're giving it is when this handle toggle function runs, we want it to perform an operation for us, and which is set toggle, which is the function through which we can change the value of the toggle. We want this function to do this one operation, perform this operation. We want it to set toggle to opposite of whatever it is at the moment. That means if it is false, we want it to be true, and if it is true, we want it to be false. That's what the set toggle should do for us. All right, so now that we have this, the difference between password and text box, for example, let me say, if what we have here is text, right? If we run this application, we will have text here. All right, we have text here. Okay, so but what we have here is password, right? And that is the reason why we can't see what we are typing. Okay, this icon here is from the icon we pasted here, so ignore it for the time being. Right, so we can use our JavaScript to say if toggle is false, we want the text type to be password, but if toggle is true, that is else, we want the input type, if the toggle is false, we want input type to be password, but if the toggle is true, we want input type to be text. So that is what we have here. And then the difference between the icon, the closed eye icon, and look at these two icons here, the closed eye icon, the open eye icon, the difference actually is this text here. Okay, this text here is really the difference. So let's put our JavaScript here once again and say if toggle is false, which is the meaning of this here, this should be the icon type, right? But if toggle is false, that is if toggle is true, now else, we want this to be the icon type. So let's take this off. Let's run it. Type 1 2 3 4 5, flip. See that, right? So every time we type something, we can simply see what we're typing. It's as easy as that. So these are one of the things you can do using. Now, if you have understood this, you should really clap for yourself, and we can move on to the next lesson. But if you have not understood everything I've done here, my appeal to you is that you take this video back, pause it as many times as you want, listen to it as many times as you want, and practice as much as possible. The best way to learn how to code is to code a lot, right? There is no shame if you have not understood it right now. Some people, it's going to take a while. All right, so please, if you have understood everything, let's go to the next lesson, and that is the next video.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright.